Picture this, it's June 30th, 2009, the middle of the Indian Ocean at night. A 12-year-old girl named Bahia Bakari is floating in the black water, alone. She can't swim. She's never been able to swim. Around her, debris from a plane crash is scattered across the dark sea. Seat cushions, luggage, pieces of metal, and bodies. She can see bodies floating in the darkness. Bahia clings to a piece of wreckage, a piece of the airplane fuselage, just big enough to hold onto. The water is cold. The waves are enormous, lifting her up and slamming her down. She's exhausted. She's terrified. She keeps calling out, "Mama, Mama," but there's no answer, just the sound of the ocean and the darkness all around her. She's been in the water for hours already. The sun went down long ago. She has no idea if anyone is looking for her. No idea if she'll survive until morning. All she knows is that she has to keep holding on, keep floating, keep breathing, because if she lets go, she'll drown. Bahia Bakari will spend 13 hours in that ocean, 13 hours clinging to wreckage, unable to swim, battling waves, cold, exhaustion, and fear. She's the only survivor out of 153 people on Yemenia Flight 626, and when she's finally rescued, the world will call it a miracle. But for Bahia, those 13 hours are pure survival, a 12-year-old girl refusing to give up even when everything tells her she should. This is the story of Bahia Bakari, the girl who survived the impossible, and it starts with a flight that should have been routine. Let me take you back to June 29, 2009. Bahia Bakari is a French Comorian girl, living in Paris with her family. She's 12 years old, in middle school, living a normal life. That summer she's traveling with her mother Aziza, to visit family in the Comoros Islands, a small island nation off the coast of East Africa. The trip requires 2 flights, first from Paris to Sana'a, Yemen, then a connecting flight on Yemenia Airways from Yemen to the Comoros. The second leg is on an Airbus A310, a mid-sized jet that's been in service for over 19 years. It's an older plane, but still considered airworthy. Bahia and her mother board flight 626 in Sana'a, late in the evening on June 29. There are 153 people on board, 142 passengers and 11 crew members. Most passengers are Comorians returning home or visiting family. The flight is scheduled to take about 4.5 hours, arriving in Moroni, Comoros early in the morning. Bahia sits with her mother. It's her first time flying without her father and siblings. She's a little nervous, but her mother is there, which makes her feel safe. The plane takes off. Everything seems normal. Bahia tries to sleep. Somewhere over the Indian Ocean, a few hours into the flight, Bahia wakes up. She looks out the window. It's completely dark outside. No lights, just blackness. The plane is flying normally. She feels fine. She drifts back to sleep. Then, at approximately 1:50 a.m. local time, disaster strikes. The Airbus A310 is on its final approach to Moroni's Prince Said Ibrahim International Airport. The plane begins its descent. The pilots are preparing to land. Weather conditions are poor, strong winds, rain, low visibility. But the pilots have done this approach many times before. Then something goes catastrophically wrong. The plane suddenly pitches down. The nose drops sharply. It's not a normal descent. It's falling. The pilots try to correct, pulling up, fighting the controls. But the plane doesn't respond properly. It continues descending too fast, too steeply. At 1:51 a.m., Flight 626 slams into the Indian Ocean about 10 miles north of the runway. The impact is devastating. The plane hits the water at high speed and breaks apart instantly. Fuel ignites. There's fire. Then the plane sinks rapidly into the dark ocean. Bahia doesn't remember the crash. One moment she's asleep. The next moment she's in the water. She doesn't know how she got there. She doesn't know what happened. Everything is chaos. Darkness, cold water, debris everywhere. She's not wearing a life jacket. She can't swim. She's never learned. But somehow she's floating. There's a piece of wreckage nearby, part of the plane's fuselage, maybe 3 feet long. She grabs it. It's all she has. It's what will keep her alive. Bahia starts calling for her mother. "Mama, Mama, where are you?" She's panicking, crying, screaming. But there's no answer, just the sound of waves and wind. The ocean at night is terrifying. It's completely dark. No moon, no stars visible through the clouds and rain. The water is cold, maybe 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't sound cold, but after hours in water, it causes hypothermia. The waves are massive, lifting Bahia up several feet, then dropping her down into troughs. Each wave crashes over her head, forcing her underwater. She has to hold her breath, cling to the wreckage, then surface and gasp for air before the next wave hits. And she's 12 years old, a child, alone in the ocean in the middle of the night. Most people in Bahia's situation would die within hours. Drowning, hypothermia, exhaustion, any of these would be enough. But Bahia does something remarkable. She holds on. She doesn't let go of that piece of wreckage. She doesn't give up, even when her arms are screaming with fatigue. Even when she's so cold, she can barely feel her hands. Even when waves keep slamming her underwater, she holds on. Hour 1 passes. Then hour 2. Bahia is exhausted. Her arms are cramping from holding the wreckage. The salt water is burning her eyes. She's swallowed so much seawater that she's nauseous, but she keeps holding on. She can hear things in the water around her. Splashing, movement, she doesn't know what it is. Sharks, debris, bodies. She's too terrified to look. She just focuses on holding on, breathing, surviving the next wave. Hour 3, 4, 5. The night feels endless. Bahia's mind starts playing tricks on her. She thinks she sees lights. She thinks she hears voices. She calls out, but there's no one there. She's hallucinating from exhaustion and fear. She thinks about her mother constantly. Where is she? Is she alive? Did she survive? Bahia doesn't know that her mother is already dead, that Aziza didn't survive the crash. She keeps hoping, keeps thinking maybe her mother is out there somewhere floating in the darkness, also waiting for rescue. This hope, the belief that her mother might be alive, gives Bahia something to hold on to beyond the wreckage, a reason to survive. If her mother is alive, Bahia needs to survive so they can find each other. This thought, irrational as it might be, keeps her going. Hour 6, 7, 8. Dawn begins to break. The sky slowly lightens from black to gray to pale blue. Bahia can finally see around her, and what she sees is devastating. Debris is scattered everywhere, seat cushions, luggage, pieces of the plane, and bodies. Lots of bodies floating face down in the water. Bahia realizes she might be the only person alive. The thought is overwhelming, but there's also something else. With daylight, she can be seen. Rescuers, if there are rescuers, can find her now. Hour 9, 10. The sun is fully up now. The water is warmer, but Bahia is still dangerously hypothermic. Her lips are blue. She's shaking uncontrollably. Her hands are so cramped from holding the wreckage that she can barely move her fingers, but she doesn't let go. The ocean is calmer during the day, but the waves are still significant. Bahia is being pushed around, drifting with currents. She has no idea where she is relative to land. No idea if she's drifting toward shore or out to sea. Hour 11, 12. Bahia is barely conscious now. She's been in the water for over half a day. Her body is shutting down from exhaustion and hypothermia. She's hallucinating more frequently, seeing planes that aren't there, hearing voices in the wind. She starts to wonder if maybe she should just let go, just stop fighting. It would be so easy to slip under the water and let the ocean take her. But something keeps her holding on. Maybe it's survival instinct. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's the thought of her mother. Whatever it is, Bahia refuses to let go. Hour 13. Bahia hears something real this time. The sound of an engine, a boat engine. She forces her head up, looking around, and there it is, a small fishing boat in the distance. Bahia tries to scream, to wave, to get their attention, but she's so weak that barely any sound comes out. She raises one arm, barely lifting it above the water. The boat is moving away from her. But then somehow the boat turns. It's coming toward her. The fishermen have seen her. The boat pulls up alongside Bahia. Fishermen reach down, grabbing her, pulling her from the water. She's so exhausted she can barely help them. They lift her into the boat, wrap her in blankets, give her water. Bahia is saved. After 13 hours in the Indian Ocean, clinging to wreckage, unable to swim, a 12-year-old girl has survived what should have been impossible. The fishermen radio for help. A military helicopter is dispatched. Bahia is airlifted to a hospital in Moroni. Doctors are shocked she's alive. She's suffering from severe hypothermia, dehydration, exhaustion and injuries from the crash, but she's alive. And then she learns the devastating truth. She's the only survivor. Out of 153 people on flight 626, only Bahia Bakari made it. Her mother Aziza is dead. Everyone is dead. Bahia is alone. The news of a 12-year-old sole survivor spreads instantly. It becomes international news. Miracle girl survives plane crash. 12-year-old only survivor of Comoros crash. The media descends on the Comoros. Everyone wants to know, how did she survive? What happened? But Bahia doesn't remember much. She doesn't remember the crash itself. She doesn't remember how she got out of the plane. She just remembers being in the water, holding onto that piece of wreckage, refusing to let go. Investigators begin examining the crash. The Airbus A310's flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder are recovered from the ocean floor. The investigation reveals that the crash was caused by pilot error during the approach in bad weather. the pilots lost control during the descent, and the plane crashed into the ocean. The plane had a history of maintenance issues and had been flagged by French aviation authorities as potentially unsafe, but Yemenia Airways continued flying it. This led to a massive lawsuit and calls for stricter international aviation safety standards. But the technical details don't matter to Bahia. She's lost her mother. She's traumatized. She has survivor's guilt. Why did she live when everyone else died? Psychologists tell her it's not her fault, that she's incredibly lucky, that she's a survivor. But at 12 years old, Bahia doesn't feel lucky. She feels broken. Bahia returns to France to recover. Her father, who lost his wife in the crash, has to help his daughter process impossible trauma. Bahia struggles with PTSD, nightmares, anxiety. She can't look at water without panicking. She has flashbacks of floating in the dark ocean, of seeing bodies, of calling for her mother. But slowly, very slowly, Bahia starts to heal. She goes to therapy. She talks about what happened. She learns that surviving isn't something to feel guilty about. She starts to reclaim her life. In 2010, Bahia writes a book about her experience called Mo Bahia, La Miracule, Mi Bahia, The Miracle Girl. It's her way of processing the trauma, of telling her story in her own words. She describes those 13 hours in the ocean, the fear, the cold, the exhaustion, the determination to survive. She writes about her mother, about missing her, about grieving her. The book becomes a bestseller in France. Bahia uses it to raise awareness about aviation safety and to honor the other 152 people who died that night. Today, Bahia Bakari is in her late 20s. She's alive, living in France, trying to build a normal life despite the trauma. She rarely gives interviews. She wants to be known as more than the crash survivor. She wants to be Bahia, a person with hopes, dreams, a future. But she also knows her survival was extraordinary. Doctors and survival experts have analyzed her case. They all agree she shouldn't have survived. A 12-year-old child who can't swim, floating in the open ocean for 13 hours at night, in rough seas, in the cold. The odds of survival are essentially zero. But Bahia refused to accept those odds. She held on to that piece of wreckage with a determination that defied statistics, logic, and probability. When her body wanted to give up, her mind said no. When the ocean tried to take her, she fought back. When the darkness whispered, "Let go," she screamed no. That's the real miracle of Bahia Bakari. Not that she survived, though that's incredible, but that she chose to survive. Every second of those 13 hours, she made a choice, hold on or let go. And 46,800 times in a row, she chose to hold on. There are lessons in Bahia's story, about resilience, about the human will to survive, about how even children, even people who think they're weak, have reservoirs of strength they never knew existed. Bahia didn't know she was strong enough to survive 13 hours in the ocean. She'd never been tested like that. She'd never had to be that strong. But when the moment came, when everything was taken from her, and she was left alone in the dark water, she found that strength. And that's inspiring. Not because Bahia is superhuman, but because she's not. She's just a girl who refused to give up, who held on when holding on seemed impossible, who survived because surrender wasn't an option. Flight 626 crashed because of pilot error and systemic aviation safety failures. 152 people died that night, but one girl lived. And she lived because she fought for every single breath, every single second for 13 straight hours. Bahia Bakari is the sole survivor of Yemenia Flight 626, the girl who couldn't swim but stayed afloat for 13 hours, the 12-year-old who survived when trained adults didn't, the child who lost her mother but found a will to live that nothing could break. When people call her a miracle, Bahia sometimes pushes back. She says she's not a miracle, she's a survivor. There's a difference. Miracles are passive, survival is active. Bahia didn't just get lucky. She fought, she clawed, she held on with everything she had. And now, years later, when Bahia looks at the ocean, she doesn't just see the place where she almost died. She sees the place where she refused to die, where she proved to herself and to the world that 12 years old is old enough to be brave, old enough to be strong, old enough to survive the unsurvivable. Bahia Bakari, the girl who held on for 13 hours, in the dark, alone, and lived.